wavelengths are going to propagate inside the fiber simultaneously at different wavelengths. Okay, so let me uh, go with a definition of what is WDM. WDM is nothing but it's a technology of combining multiple wavelength signals, or it's a technology of combining n number of independent information carrying wavelengths onto the same fiber. So that is what the definition of WDM. And when it comes to the applications of WDM, WDM technique is being used in all at all levels of communication links, such as long distance, terrestrial, undersea transmission system, metropolitan networks, and wide area networks, or even in case of fiber to home, that is FTH, or fiber to the premises, FTT. Okay, so these are all some of the major applications in which the WDM technique is being utilized. And coming to the overview of WDM, how WDM concept has originated. So let me look into that. So prior to WDM, so we had a simplex system wherein which we have an optical source at the transmitter side, and we have a photo detector at the receiver side. And this transmitter and the photo detector is being connected using an optical fiber, which is a single optical fiber with which can carry only one signal of a single wavelength. So that is what the concept of simplex system. Because this simplex system was available in 1980, because it's also called as point-to-point communication system. This was available because we didn't had an efficient light source such as laser during those days, in which we can generate uh, wavelengths of spectral width in terms of nanometer size. Okay, so later came high quality light sources with an extremely narrow spectral width, say less than nanometer size, 1 nanometer size, and because of which any independent wavelength channels can be spaced in less than 1 nanometer spacing. So that is how the concept of WDM has evolved. And because of such light sources, WDM allows a dramatic increase in the capability or the capacity of the optical fiber compared to whatever the simple point-to-point communication system that just recently we had seen. So another advantage of WDM is various optical passive components are being utilized in WDM, so that the multi-wavelength signal can be transmitted efficiently from the transmitting side to the receiving side. And we can also have individual signals of different transmission format. That is also an advantage of WDM. You can just go through here. Various optical channels can be supported in different transmission formats. So transmission formats means we can have one signal at say uh, uh, which is getting transmitted in a return to zero RZ format, or we can have an NRZ format. These are all some of the transmission formats in which the signals can be uh, propagated inside the fiber. So individual wavelength can have individual transmission format. That is what the advantage of WDM. And the speed in which the data is being propagated for a single wavelength, it may be different, or it may be same or different from other wavelength signals. So that is one of the advantage of WDM. Coming to the operating principles, uh, one of the characteristic that the WDM technique is going to offer is uh, there is a discrete wavelength. These discrete wavelengths, they form an orthogonal set of carriers which can be separated, routed, and switched without interfering with each other. So this is one of the property that the WDM is going to exhibit, because of which we can place n number of different channels. I mean n number of different wavelengths on a same channel. Okay. Uh, each wavelength will not be interfering with another wavelength. That is the meaning of orthogonal set of carriers which are separated, routed, and they are switched without interfering with each other. So one once we need to establish this WDM network, or WDM concept. So we need to have various passive and optical devices. Uh, just go through this block diagram. This is an implementation of typical WDM network which contains various optical passive and active devices. So can you identify the passive and active devices here? So you can see multiplexer, wavelength multiplexer, which will combine multiple wavelengths, say lambda 1, lambda 2 up to lambda n. These wavelength signals are being generated by our uh, active source such as laser. Okay. So we have n different laser sources, or we can also have a single laser source. If it is a tunable laser source, we can have a single laser source wherein which if you can tune it properly so that it starts generating different wavelength signals. So in the sense, if the current that is being passed on to the optical source, if you vary the current, that itself will change the wavelength that the light is being emitted from a light source, laser source. So that is how the tunable light source is being constructed. So here we can see multiple transmission sources. That means to say we have multiple wavelength signals are being generated by this laser source. These wavelengths are being combined by an optical passive device such as wavelength multiplexer. So this wavelength multiplexer is going to combine all these wavelengths, lambda 1, lambda 2 up to lambda n. So output of which is a combination of lambda 1 up to lambda n. And you can find various amplifiers which are being placed throughout the span of this WDM network. So we have different amplifiers like post amplifier, inline amplifier, and pre-amplifier. These amplifiers are placed at different stages because the distance in which the signal is being carried is large, because of which we need to place amplifiers at different stages. The functioning of these amplifiers will be known later in this module. Okay. And at the receiver side, you can find an opposite functioning of wavelength multiplexer, that is wavelength demultiplexer, which will separate or uh, uh, extract individual wavelength signals from a combination of lambda 1 up to lambda n, and each wavelength is being passed on to an individual destination, or we call it as receivers, or it may be a photo detector at the receivers. So this is how WDM network implementation is being done, which includes optical passive devices such as multiplexers and active devices such as laser source and amplifiers. And this is a most important question that can be asked in the exam. And coming to this attenuation plot, I think we have gone through this graph or the attenuation plot even in the second module. X-axis defines the wavelength, y-axis defines the attenuation. So one can see that we have two bands such as 1300 nanometer band and 1550 nanometer band. These two are the windows in which the optical fibers are being operated in order to achieve uh, better bandwidth and low attenuation. Okay, so we have three windows actually. One is a 850 nanometer window which comes somewhere here, and we have another two windows, that is second window 1300 nanometer and third window 1550 nanometer. But compared to the first window, second and third are going to offer less attenuation and more bandwidth. So and that is the reason why uh, we will choose these two windows in order to operate the optical fibers, or in order to establish an optical network using the WDM concept. Uh, just please go through the equation. So we need to understand how the wavelengths, different channels are being placed in a single band of say 40 nanometer or 50 nanometer band. So in order to understand that, we need to just go with this equation, simple equation, the fundamental relationship between the wavelength and frequency, that is c is equal to lambda into nu, where c is uh, the the velocity of light in free space, lambda is the wavelength, and nu is the carrier frequency. Okay, So if we can differentiate this equation, where nu is equal to c by lambda, if you can differentiate that equation with respect to lambda, we will be getting delta v magnitude, because if you differentiate 1 by lambda, we'll be getting minus 1 by lambda square. So all those signs will be ignored here by taking modulus on both sides. So since we are differentiating the frequency with respect to lambda, so this is delta nu respect to wavelength, and on the right hand side we have c by lambda square into delta nu. Okay, so where this equation will tell us delta nu is nothing but the frequency deviation corresponding to the wavelength deviation of delta lambda around the wavelength lambda. Okay. So delta nu or delta lambda will tell us what is the spacing or the uh, spacing between two independent channels. Please go through this spectrum. Uh, you can see this is a standard that is being defined by ITU. ITU is an organization which is under the control of European Union. ITU stands for International Telecommunication Union. The standard that is set by ITU is G1 G.692. This is the recommendation that is being brought up by the ITU, wherein which one has to maintain spacing between independent channels. Okay, so you can see here we have selected a band, as I was mentioning. We have selected 1535 to 1565. So it's a 30 nanometer band which we have selected here. So this 30 nanometer band, how many such independent wavelength signals can be placed in this 30 nanometer band which we have selected? So that is how we are going to place individual wavelength channels over a band of 30 nanometer, and that is again being defined by ITU. So one has to follow the recommendation that is being brought up by the ITU in order to place the channels which are independent. Okay, so just go with the statement, consider a spectral band of zero point 0.8 nanometer. That means to say individual wavelength that is being generated by the light source is zero point 0.8 nanometer. So if you invert this, you will be getting 100 gigahertz. That is the relationship between the wavelength and frequency. So consider a spectral band of zero point 0.8 nanometer at a 1550 nanometer wavelength, within which the lasers with a narrow line widths are transmitting. So one can have 50 independent signal channels in this band of 1535 to 1565 band. I think it should be 1575. Just consider it as 1575 because I have done it for 40 nanometer. You can even do it for 30 nanometer band. Okay, so I think I have written 40 here. So 40 by zero point 0.8 nanometer will give 50 independent channels. 1565 to 1535, so which gives us only 30 nanometer. You can just correct it as 1575, or it can be 30 nanometer divided by zero point 0.8. So this tells us we can place uh, 40 independent, I mean 40 by zero point 0.8 nanometer, which is 50 independent channels that can be placed over a band of 30 nanometer, provided the laser source is going to generate spectral width of a wavelength 0.8 nanometer. So here the width in which the light source is being generated by the laser source also matters here, because uh, if the width is larger, we cannot place more number of channels in a given band. So here the width is 0.8 nanometer, which is less than 1 nanometer, and we have given a band of 40 nanometer here. 40 by zero point 0.8 nanometer will give us 50. That is 50 independent channels can be placed over a band of 40 nanometers, starting from 1535 to 1575 nanometer. And this is what the recommendation that is being brought up by ITU, which according to this recommendation, what one has to use is, I mean, one has to consider is we need to have a laser source which should generate the spectral width of zero point 0.8 nanometer, not greater than zero point 0.8 nanometer. Okay. So coming to WDM standards. So as I was mentioning, we have a organization called as International Telecommunication Union. This union is under the control of Europe, in European continent, and we have a different organization which is called as ANSI, American National Standard or Interface, that is under the control of United States. Okay, so this ITU is a rule, I mean, organization which is going to set certain rules or protocols in which if 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 any organization has to establish, any private organization has to establish an optical network, those organizations have to follow the recommendation that is being set up by ITU. That is what the meaning of WDM standards. Okay, so there are certain recommendation. I just keep on mentioning one by one now. So recommendation G.692, as I did mention in the previous band here. So this is one of the recommendation of ITU, which the name that they have given as G.692. So recommendation G.692 was the first ITU specification for WDM, and this document it specifies that selecting the channels from a grid of frequency reference from 193.1 terahertz, um, uh, say 1552 nanometer, 1552.52 nanometer, that is a wavelength equivalent to that of frequencies 193.1 terahertz, and the spacing of them is 100 gigahertz, that is about zero point 0.8 nanometer. So if you have a grid of frequencies reference it to 193.1 terahertz, that is 1552.52 is nothing but 193.12 terahertz, 1 terahertz. So the spacing between individual channels must be 100 gigahertz, which is equivalent to zero point 0.8 nanometer. That is what the recommendation, the first recommendation that ITU has brought up. And the term that they have used, if the spacing is uh, zero point 0.8 nanometer or 100 gigahertz, is dense WDM. In short form, we call it as DWDM. So the term DWDM, it generally refers to small wavelength separation between independent channels, and that is denoted as G.692 by ITU. Okay. So dense WDM means more number of channels can be placed in a small wavelength band of say 40 nanometer or 30 nanometer that they were considered here. See, we have only 30 or 40 nanometers here. We can place 50 independent wavelength signals or 50 independent channels that can be placed in this band, and each band is being separated by a band of 100 gigahertz or zero point 0.8 nanometer channel spacing. That is what the recommendation of G.692 tells us. And the term that uh, we can use is dense WDM, because the channels are densely packed in this G.692 recommendation brought up by ITU. So they have revised this recommendation in 2002, and they've named it as G.694.1, specifically with respect to DWDM itself. Um, it calls for a narrow frequency spacing of 10 to 12.5 gigahertz, which is equivalent to 0.8 to 1.1 nanometer at 1550. That means to say, you can have the frequency separation say zero point 0.8 to zero point 0.1 nanometer. Earlier, uh, G.692 tells that the spacing should be zero point 0.8 nanometer. The revised recommendation says G.694.1 says you can have a frequency separation of in the range 0.8 to zero point 0.1 nanometer. So you can go up to zero point 0.1 nanometer, so that more and more independent channels can be placed. Say for zero point 0.8 nanometer, we came to know it is 50 independent channels that can be placed in a given band of 40 nanometer. If you go for 0.6, 0.7 or 0.2, more and more wavelength signals or channels can be placed. So that is what the revised recommendation says. But if you have to adopt this G.692 or G.694.1, uh, you need to have the equipments or the components which are precise. Say, for example, you can see here This implementation of a dense WDM, it requires a stable, high quality, temperature controlled, wavelength controlled laser diode or laser sources, laser diode light sources with a tolerance band of zero point zero 0.02 nanometer, plus or minus 0.02 nanometer. Please concentrate on this tolerance band. The laser or laser diode light source should have a fluctuation in the range of plus or minus 0.02 nanometer. Uh, this is what the condition that one has to adopt in order to establish a dense WDM network. And I'll just read out again. This implementation of dense WDM, it requires a stable, high quality, temperature controlled, wavelength controlled laser source, which is exhibiting a tolerance limit of 0.02 plus or minus 0.02 nanometer. Okay, so this must be the accuracy of the light source, which should be precise, which should be stable, which should be high quality, temperature and wavelength controlled. All these parameters have to be satisfied by a laser source, and it is highly complicated to manufacture certain one such laser source which is having a tolerance band of 0.02 nanometer, and the cost of that laser source is also more compared to a less tolerance band in the say in the range of zero point 0.1 nanometer. Okay, and we have another WDM, that is what we call it as CWDM in short form, and it is called as coherence WDM, which is opposite to that of dense WDM. As we saw in dense WDM, uh, the channel spacings are very small, and number of channels that are being placed in a given band is also more. So in coherence WDM, uh, the channel spacing is large, and the number of independent channels that can be placed in a given band is also very less. So it is opposite to that of dense WDM, where we have a more channel spacing and less number of uh, channels or independent signals that can be placed. And we can also have the spectral width of say 20 nanometer here. Here we don't require a highly accurate laser source as we were in requirement compared to dense WDM. So in dense WDM, as I was mentioning, the tolerance band should be in the range of plus or minus zero point zero 0.02 nanometer. But here, that tolerance may not be required because the channel spacing is more, and the number of channels that can be placed in a given band is also less. Okay, and ITU has come up with a different recommendation for this coherence WDM. They've named it as G.652.c, G.652c and G.652d, and the development of these fibers or the components related to this coherence WDM, they are relatively inexpensive optical sources, and the desire to have a low cost optical links operating in access networks and local area networks. So please understand here, we- excuse me. So please understand here, we have two kinds of wavelength division multiplexing. One is the dense WDM, uh, and another one is the coherence WDM. So just to have a comparison between those two, we have an ITU which is going to uh, give some recommendations. So G.694 and G.692 were the recommendation for dense WDM, whereas G.652c and 652d are the recommendations that ITU has given for coherence WDM. In dense WDM, we can have uh, more number of individual independent channels that can be placed on a given band, wherein which the laser source should be precise, temperature controlled, wavelength controlled with a tolerance band of plus or minus zero point 0.2 nanometer. Here in coherence WDM, uh, you can place less number of channels, and the band in which the independent channels can be placed is also more. I mean to say the spacing between two independent channels is more in case of coax WDM. So if such is the case, we don't require a highly accurate source, which is costlier. So here in coax WDM, it is relatively inexpensive optical light sources such as laser sources can be used, and the application of dense WDM is in metropolitan area networks and wide area networks. So metropolitan area network is nothing but the connection or the interconnection or establishing a network between two cities, and wide area network is establishing the interconnection between countries or continents. Here in coax WDM, and because we are using inexpensive light sources and channel spacing is also more, and the number of channels that can be placed inside the given band is also less, and the light sources are inexpensive, and we are not going to use a costlier light sources as we did for dense WDM. And the application of this coarse WDM uh, are in local area network as well as in access networks, small networks. So if you are establishing a small networks, we can go for coarse WDM. If you want to establish a huge network wherein which we are connecting countries or continents or even cities, we have to prefer dense WDM. So that is how the recommendation that is being brought up by ITU in order to distinguish between dense and coarse WDM. So please understand those differences which I mentioned. So you can see here, just to continue with the coarse WDM. So with respect to coarse WDM, they have released a recommendation G692 694.2. Please remember G692 694.1 is with respect to dense WDM. G694.2 is with respect to coarse WDM, and they have defined the spectral grid wherein which we can place only 18 wavelengths and a range of 12700 to 1610 nanometer, and the channel spacing between one independent channel and the other channel is 20 nanometer. Please understand here, there in dense WDM the channel spacing was only zero point 0.8 nanometer, 0.8 nanometer, whereas here the channel spacing is 20 nanometer, and the band which we have considered there is 1535 to 1565 in that case, or if it is 1575, in that case we have only 40 nanometer band there. But here the band which we have considered here is 1270 to 1610. That means to say it's almost 320 nanometer, approximately 320 nanometer band. And you can also see the laser source tolerance band, it is plus or minus 2 nanometer. There it was plus or minus zero point zero 0.02 nanometer. So there it in dense WDM. So that is how we can differentiate between coherence and dense WDM. So with this statements of what we have considered, where the band we have considered as 1270 to 1610 nanometer with a 20 nanometer spacing and a tolerance band of tolerance limit of one plus or minus 2 nanometer, uh, which can be easily achieved by using inexpensive light sources and which are not temperature controlled. Please remember here, in coherence WDM we don't require an expensive laser sources, we don't require a laser source which is temperature and wavelength controlled here in coherence WDM. And you can see the spectral grid of coherence WDM, and you can just compare the spectral grid with that of the spectral grid that I had discussed previously with respect to dense WDM. So this is the spectral grid of dense WDM, and this is the spectral grid of coherence WDM, where we can see the band we have started from 1270 to 1610. In between, some of the wavelengths are not being selected for the purpose of communication, as I was mentioning in module 2. 1400 nanometer, it results in highest attenuation peak, within which we cannot use that wavelength for operation of optical amplifiers. So some of the wavelengths in between are not being used. That is the reason why the spacing between the two independent channels is maintained as 20 nanometer, and we can have only 18 channels that can be placed in such a huge band of 1270 to 1610 nanometer. So that's about the WDM standards. Uh, in WDM standards, we have two classification, dense WDM and coarse WDM. All these recommendations are being brought up separately for dense and coarse WDM by ITU. And you just have to follow those recommendations. Say for a private organization, if they have to establish a dense WDM, they have to follow the recommendation related to G.692 and G.694.1 related to DWDM, and one has to establish a local network or an access networks in a local area or in a small organization, so they can go for coherent WDM. In that case, they have to follow the recommendation G.692.2, and the fibers one has to use is G.652C, 652D. These are the fiber types that ITU recommends if one has to establish coherent WDM. Okay? Don't get confused with G.652C and 652D. These are the types of fibers. For fibers, they have named some, they have given some names such as G50, G.652 and G.652C and D. And the recommendation for coherent WDM is G.694.2. Okay, so that's about WDM standards and operating principles of WDM. Uh, from now onwards, we need to discuss different types of optical passive and active devices. So, as I was mentioning in the syllabus, we have different optical passive and active devices. I'll just uh, read out one by one. Mach-Zehnder interferometer multiplexer. In WDM, if we can just go with the operating principle of WDM, that is the implementation of WDM, you can just see we have multiplexer here, wavelength multiplexer. This wavelength multiplexer is a passive device. So how do we construct this optical passive device, which is going to operate directly in optical domain? Please concentrate here. Whatever the devices that we have used in this implementation of a typical WDM network, all those devices are going to operate directly in optical domain. There is no option for converting electrical to optical or optical to electrical, as we have seen in the general block diagram of an optical fiber system. So all those devices will be operating in directly in optical domain. So we have to understand how do we construct these optical passive and active devices. You can see we have a first optical passive device that we need to understand is Mach-Zehnder interferometer multiplexer. Uh, how do we establish this Mach-Zehnder interferometer multiplexer, and how do we achieve the multiplexing concept using this MZI? And later on, we have isolators, circulators, fiber grating filters, direct thin film filters, diffraction gratings. These are all some of the optical passive components. And coming to optical active components, we have a number of active components which we are going to study as a part of module 4. And tunable light sources, these are all the optical passive component, sorry, active component. Optical amplifier is also an active component. So under optical amplifiers, we have different categories, say semiconductor optical amplifier, and in short form we call it as SOA. Erbium doped fiber amplifier, in short form we call it as EDFA, which is a popular amplifier, optical amplifier. And we are going to understand about what is Raman amplifier and wideband optical amplifiers. So this is the flow of module 4. So after being understood the concept of WDM and the standards that is being established using the concept of WDM, so we now have to switch over to understanding the different optical passive and active components that are being used in order to establish the typical WDM network. So Mach-Zehnder, I'll just give a brief introduction to what is Mach-Zehnder interferometer multiplexer, and we have a derivation for this Mach-Zehnder interferometer multiplexer. Uh, uh, in order to achieve how the multiplexing is going to happen, So that I'll be taking up later. So just to have a brief introduction to what is interferometer, I think many of you have understood the concept of interference. So interference is nothing but if you have a light source which is going to generate a beam of light, and if that beam of light is allowed to pass on to an obstacle in which the obstacle has some openings, what we call it as slits. So through these slits, if the light energy or the optical signal is passed on through these slits, so that is nothing but an opening of an obstacle. The outcome of these slits, where we have some of the wavelength signals are going to interfere constructively, and some of the wavelength signals are going to interfere destructively. So those wavelength signals which are going to interfere constructively will be considered, and those wavelength signals which are going to be interfering destructively will be ignored. So the same principle is being used here in Mach-Zehnder interferometer multiplexer. Okay, so please understand the the concept of interference, wherein which the light is being passed on to an obstacle with small openings, what we call it as slits. And if a light is coming out of that slit, we have an independent wave, we have a different wavelength signals which are going to interfere constructively at some point, and the same wavelength signals are going to interfere destructively at some other point. So those wavelengths which are interfering destructively are not being used for our purpose, and only those wavelengths which are being interfering constructively are being used for the purpose of multiplexing. So the same concept is used here. Uh, so here in MZI, we are going to understand the implementation of a 2 cross 2 MZI, or it is also generally called as 2 is to 1 multiplexing. I think we all know how a 2 is to 1 multiplexer works. We have two inputs and one output, and these two inputs are being combined and passed on to output. That's also called as 2 cross 2. So how do we implement one such MZI? So we have a layout of a 2 cross 2 MZI here. Just you can go through the layout of 2 cross 2 MZI. We have three stages in this layout. The first stage is a 3 dB splitter. Please understand the splitter and combiner are the optical couplers that we have already studied. Optical coupler is also a kind of passive device. 3 dB splitter, we have a second stage which we call it as phase shifter, and third stage we will call it as 3 dB combiner. So this 3 dB splitter and combiner are going to work in opposite way, wherein which why it is called as a 3 dB splitter, you can just refer here. A 3 dB splitter is a one which is also called as a directional coupler, which will split the incoming signal equally into the two arms of the output of the directional coupler. Say if the power of the incoming signal is say 50 milliwatt, or sorry 50 microwatt, the splitter is going to split this 50 microwatt power equally to the two output arms, say for example 25 microwatt and 25 microwatt to both the arms. That is what the meaning of 3 dB splitter. If it is not a 3 dB splitter, it may not split the incoming power equally as 25 microwatts and 25 microwatts to the two arms. It may be say 27 on one of the arm and 23 to the other arm. So in that case, we don't call it as a 3 dB splitter. So I think we also have discussed a problem related to fused biconical tapered coupler, uh, in which we have understood how 3 dB power is being distributed by that FDP, I mean FBT, fiber fused biconical tapered coupler. And we also did a problem on that where we have calculated different uh, uh, parameters such as splitting ratio, coupling ratio, insertion loss, all those things. Okay. So we go back to this layout of MZI. We have a 3 dB splitter which will accept the two incoming signals from the two arms at the input side, and this splitter is going to combine that power that is being coming through the two inputs E in 1 and E in 2 of the input arms of the splitter, and it is going to split this combination of the powers equally to the two arms at the output. And the second stage is a phase shifter. The phase shifter, you can see we have two arms of the phase shifter. One is having a length L, other is having a length L plus delta L. So this additional length delta L is the one which will introduce a phase shift, and because of which there is an interference that can happen here. And because of this reason of having an additional length delta L, where two independent wavelength signals at the input port of the 3 dB splitter is being split equally in terms of powers to the phase shifter, and phase shifter is going to introduce a phase shift in one of the arms, and there is no phase shift in the other arm. And the arm in which the phase shift is being introduced, those wavelength signals will be interfering destructively at the output, and the arm in which the phase shift is not being introduced is going to interfere constructively to some other port. So at the output we will have a combination of lambda 1 and lambda 2, which is coming out at E out 2, that is second port of the 3 dB combiner. Combiner is an optical coupler which works opposite to that of splitter, which will accept the wavelengths that is coming from the phase shifter, and it is going to combine the signals, wherein which destructively combined wavelengths will be coming out at port 1, which we are not using, and interfering constructively will be coming out at this other port, wherein which we are going to use or extract that signal, where a combination of lambda 1 and lambda 2 is appearing here. So this is the working principle of the Mach-Zehnder interferometer 2 cross 2 MZI, which is similar to that of 2:1 multiplexer.